Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Today our focus is going to be on Coinbase Global, ticker COIN. The company provides an easy to use platform for the crypto market. They have also been working to legitimize the crypto market with US regulators by establishing clear rules and guidelines. However, both Coinbase and the SEC have filed legal actions against each other while trying to establish these crypto market guidelines. Also, to point out, Coinbase has only been in the public market since 2021, so publicly available financial data is limited. In this video, we'll look at Coinbase's financials, performance stock valuation, and at the end of the video, we'll go into computer modeling to forecast the 52-week stock movement. So let's jump right into it. So here's the financials for Coinbase, and first thing to point out is this far right-hand column represents the trailing 12 months. And we're going to look at the top row first for revenue, and data only goes back to 2019 as the company went public in 2021. But we can see from 2019 into 2020 and 2021, the revenue grew nicely and with a big jump from 2020 into 2021. Now, this also tracks the price of Bitcoin, and during this time, the price of it skyrocketed, especially in 2021, hitting almost $70,000. And there's a lot of correlation between Coinbase's financials and the price of Bitcoin. And then going into 2022, the price of Bitcoin started to drop, and even into the trailing 12 months. And we can see here with the financials. I will point out, probably over the past month or two, towards the end of 2023, price of Bitcoin has started to go up significantly, and it's not shown here in the trailing 12 months as Coinbase has not released their Q4 results. But moving on to these other rows, net income and earnings per share. So we can see here kind of tracks the same thing with revenue. They net income positive in 2020 and 2021. Nice to see for an early company having been net income positive. 2022, yes, significantly negative, but trailing 12 months, they actually improved that, though still negative. And then net earnings per share, we can see here, had that nice jump up in 2021 based on the revenue. And then shares. So not uncommon for an early stage company to be diluting shareholders by giving stock-based compensation to employees, but hopefully as Coinbase grows, that this would start to decline and maybe eventually they'll start buying back shares. Book value. So we can see book value was on a nice growth path, though trailing 12 months, a slight pullback, but we'll see how it goes when they release their annual report, probably in another month or so. And then free cash flow. So we see 2019, they were negative about 111 million. But then nice to see this early stage company being free cash flow positive in 2020 and then 2021 again. But 2022, we can see negative, almost 1.6 billion. Yeah, they turned it around over the last trailing 12 months, slightly under 200 million, but still far off from 2020 and 2021. Now, if you saw my recent Palantir video, I did remove their negative free cash flows for the early years, but Palantir was showing a nice trend of being positive. So unfortunately, because 2022 is negative, I'm not going to remove these negative values, which would help improve the valuation that we're going to do in a few moments. Until they can show a steady trend of being free cash flow positive, I'm not willing to remove these negatives, and I'm going to take these into account. So let's move on and we'll jump down and we actually perform the stock valuation. So here we have Coinbase's valuation. We can see just below $134 and with a 70% margin of safety brings it down to $94. Now this is based on a 12% growth rate over the next 10 years with a 10% discount rate. And I am using a 3% long-term growth rate. So this is where I feel comfortable buying in, but I'm sure some people may think 12% is kind of low. This is still a growth company. So let's see what happens if you want to be a little more aggressive. Let's just say a 15% growth rate and see how it impacts the valuation. With the 15% growth rate, we can see intrinsic value jumps up to $170, and with a margin of safety of 70%, brings that down to just below $120. Now, Coinbase did have a big run up in 2023, and it was trading in the $175 to $180 range. However, most recently, there was quite a bit of a stock price drop, bringing it down to the $155 range. So if you're more comfortable with this 15% short-term growth rate, you can kind of see we're getting in that range here. I'm probably a little more comfortable at the 12%, which was more in that 93 to $120 range. But again, I can see somebody willing to pay slightly more, but I probably wouldn't pay more than 130 to 140 if I am going to invest. But it's definitely a stock I'm going to track and seeing if it's going to decline a little bit more to get in a more of a price range that gives me a bigger margin of safety that I'm more comfortable investing in. But let's move on and we will look at the computer modeling, the forecast of 52-week stock movement. So here in the computer modeling software, I already ran the analysis using two methods. First, the M5 rule shown here, and the other random forest. So this data is as of January 2nd. I know it says the first, but it's actually the second. And the far right-hand column is the stock price for Coinbase. So you can see it closed at 156.88. Right next to it is the Bitcoin price. We can see it was just over 45,000. And the third column over is the S&P 500 ETF price at 472. Other columns are just various other data points used for the analysis. Now, I did copy all the results for both methods and put it into Excel because it's a little easier to see there. But let's just scroll down 52 weeks to see what the forecast stock price is for Coinbase. And we can see towards the end of December of this year, the M5 rule is projecting basically $236 for the stock. Now, let's jump over to Random Forest and we'll take a quick look at that, and then we'll jump over to Excel. So same thing, this data is as of January 2nd, and we scroll down to the 52 weeks outlook, and we can see end of this year, it's actually projecting slightly lower than the M5 rule at just under $210. Now let's go over to Excel and look at this a little closer. So we got all the computer modeling data pasted in Excel, and first thing I'll point out is this vertical red line represents this previous Tuesday, January 2nd. And everything to the left of that vertical red line is the historical stock price, and everything to the right is the forecasted. So let's just look at a little history of Coinbase's stock price. We can see when they went public back in 2021, stock price was fairly high, looks like around 350. And following that, we can see there was a drop off. It tried to recover late 2021, getting back up to that 350 range, but then a steadily decline going into 2022, and then kind of hovered between $50 to $100 up until the end of last year, around November or so, where it started ticking back up and getting to where we are today in that $155 range. Now I'm going to jump over to another tab so we can look at the forecast a little closer. So looking at the M5 rule first, we're going to look at the forecast to the right of the vertical red line. And what is shown is the stock is going to be at this $150, $155 level, probably into February and maybe even into early March, and then begin to recover and tick up to probably about the $240 level out in April and stay there until June, but then start declining again and getting back down to this $150 range in July, and staying there looks like into probably about the September time period, and it shows a big spike getting up to $300, but then dropping off and getting back to 150 or maybe even slightly below it, but then recovering by the end of the year and closing out 2024 at around $235, which would be a gain of about 50% from where we are today. Now, I know these spikes are pretty steep, so maybe it's a little more gradual, like the one back in October of 2021, but still, it is showing the price getting up to over $200 by next year, or by the end of this year. So let's move on and look at Random Forest. So Random Forest is showing the stock to increase again, probably mid to late January, and getting back up to the $200 level, probably end of March, early April time period, and then staying above $200 for the rest of the year, and closing out 2004 at around $209, $210, which would be about a 34% gain if this does play out. But now let's just look at the average of these two methods. And then the average of the two methods, M5 rule and Random Forest, is showing the stock to start increasing again, probably late January or early February, and getting up to above $200 out in April and staying there for a few months, but then dropping back below $200, probably getting in the 180, 190 range, and staying there until the October time period where we see that spike like we saw in the M5 rule, but only getting up to $250, but then quickly dropping off and falling back below 200, but then recovering slightly and closing out 2024 at around $222, which would be about a 40% gain from where we are today. Before recapping, I'll say cryptocurrencies are an asset and I do own a little of them. However, with thousands of currencies out there, only the more well known are the ones to buy into. For the stock valuation, we saw the fair price being between $93 to $130 and maybe slightly higher if you want to be a little more aggressive on the short term growth rate. And with the stock currently trading in the $150 range, it's possible to see it get that low. Although our computer modeling methods show the stock staying above $150 for most of the year, but the M5 rule does forecast a price drop in the $130 range later this year, but then recovering, and both methods predicting the stock closing out 2024 between $209 to $235. So I hope you enjoyed this video and got some useful information. If so, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.